This is just a taste of what tomorrow night's audience can expect. The talent of conductor Richard Bonning, the Hunter Orchestra, and the voices of Jennifer McGregor, Irene Waugh, Sergei by Gilding and John Pringle.
A nice old-fashioned concert with a lot of Rigoletto and the Barbara Seville and Don Pasquale and I think some Carmen and Norma, bits of everything.
Over 1,000 tickets have so far been sold at a cost of $100 each. Along with the musical crescendo, Dame Joan Sutherland will launch the official public appeal, which aims to raise $2 million for the refurbishment of the theatre.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity to save another theatre. I come from Sydney, and in Sydney we had some gorgeous theatres, really beautiful ones, and they've all been torn down, and Sydney is left without a major, beautiful old theatre. And to save one up here is, for me, it's a privilege to be part of it.
The concert begins at 8:15 and will be followed by a champagne reception in Wheeler Place. Tickets are still available.
How could you pick from this batch? The judges had narrowed it down to 12 from 480 entrants, everyone their mother and father's pride and joy. A good appearance and personality with the qualities needed, 6-month-old Sarah Walker from Metford had it all. The 1991 Baby of the Year. Proud mum Trudy Walker was a little shocked.
I was a bit embarrassed actually, but no, I felt very proud of her. Just good, yeah. Very nervous though, like I was going to fall off the stage.
6-month-old Brooke Davies from Cessnock won the most popular baby. More than $3,000 was raised for Maitland Hospital. The money, of course, will be spent in the nursery. $1,100 people, each paying $100 per ticket, crowded the theatre for a glimpse of Australia's greatest soprano and maybe the chance of an impromptu recital. But Dame Joan was only here as patron of the appeal, her job to raise funds to restore the classic old theatre.
Through your efforts, I'm sure the theatre will take on a new lease of life and will once again be the pride of the Hunter, Newcastle's civic theatre. Thank you.
It was a gala evening, 4 performers backed by the Hunter Orchestra with Richard Bonning as conductor. It's hoped state and federal governments will support the theatre. $12 million is needed to complete the restoration.
State Transit bus drivers have undergone medical examinations for years, but the new assessment is more comprehensive, taking in such contentious conditions as AIDS. Newcastle Buses management maintains the tougher test is for the well-being of the drivers and the public they transport.
It is more stringent now. We make no apologies for that. We feel that we owe that to our employees, to our passengers and to the road users to have the best possible examination for our employees.
The drivers believe the test is not in their interests, but merely prying.
I don't think it's very fair at all. The privacy aspects concern us. They want to know things about people's health that have absolutely nothing to do with their ability to drive a bus.
There's not only questions about yourself, there's questions about illnesses, about family illnesses. There's a lot of things in it that I don't think there's any need for.
The members are worried not only by the assessment probing into their personal lives, but also this declaration they have to sign. The declaration gives State Transit the authority to sack a driver if he gives false information. With their union rejecting a government rationalisation package only 3 weeks ago, the drivers fear that this assessment could be used by State Transit to cut more jobs.
I think the timing of this could not have been worse, in as much as there's redundancy in the wind. And to me, this could, if you failed the medical, they could put you out medically unfit, and you could end up doing your redundancy package in.
It appears to be a bit of a square off to us, but we think that's a very petty attitude.
But Terry Garrett from Newcastle Buses asserts the introduction of the test has nothing to do with the union rejecting the rationalisation package, nor is it intended to weed out drivers.
Only as a very last resort. That's not the object of the exercise. The object of the exercise is to have fit, healthy bus drivers.
Drivers were supposed to return their completed assessments by this Thursday, but State Transit today extended the deadline to August the 16th. But Dave Winwood from the Drivers' Union says a stop-work meeting will go ahead as planned on Wednesday.
I wouldn't like to predict when they'll resume. Members are very incensed about this. I really don't know what's going to happen on Wednesday afternoon.
The Nabour's home away from home for the past 4 years has been a 7.6 metre top hat yacht, which Alan fitted out on Lake Macquarie. At 24, the former Muswellbrook man dreamt of single-handedly crossing the Pacific. 2 weeks before his departure, Alan met Cindy Smith, aged 21, of Warners Bay. The pair married and set sail.
Oh, I had been on a little Hobie cat once, capsized it in the middle of the lake, but that was my only sailing experience.
True love conquered everything, and the newlyweds on board their sloop, Deus Regit II, which translates from German as God Reigns, made it to Canada.
True love, and I'm sure God had something to do with it.
While there, they attended a Bible college, and before setting off again, had Annie. Now aged 2, she's at home on the boat and has travelled thousands of sea miles. To make ends meet, the Nabours worked at odd jobs and delivered yachts up and down the west coast of the United States.
We haven't been on holidays for 4 years anyway, that's for sure. Yeah. But it's been a good life, a good time.
Cindy is expecting their second child and had flown ahead of Alan, who's been battling strong headwinds for weeks. Unable to make Newcastle on schedule yesterday, he pulled into Port Stephens to be reunited with his family and had time to reflect on the voyage.
We've been looking at the sunset over the water for the last couple of years, and sort of when I saw it set behind land the other day, and I sort of all of a sudden realised that's Australia, and we kind of finished the loop. We haven't gone around the world, but we've started something and we finished it, I guess.
Alan plans to build and enter a larger boat in the 1994 BOC single-handed around the world yacht race. Andrew Lobb reporting for NBN News. Jack Dunn has a vision. Part of it is turning discarded aluminium drink cans into a useful building material. But more importantly, he wants to see young unemployed people given a chance to turn their hands to work, any work. He's making his point with the construction of an eye-catching aluminium igloo. It's built of materials most throw out without a second thought: cans, paper, bottles and old metal. The cans are packed together with cement for added strength and insulation. Jack claims the project taps the imaginations and skills of unemployed people that might otherwise go ignored. But will the can house catch on?
Never, but it's certainly different.
It was a familiar story at Leichhardt Oval yesterday. The Knights began brightly with tries to McLean and Kemp, but the Tigers hit back and just kept on hitting.
A little deja vu, wasn't it? We had a very good start. Last week we had a poor start and a good finish. It's, I suppose the combination of putting those two things together will mean the good result that we're all chasing.
With the big-name first-grade side now running third last, the temptation is there to bolster the lower ranks by dropping players who remain in good form. The appeal of that prospect was only enhanced by weekend losses that saw both the seconds and under-21s fall out of the five. The reserve graders are in equal sixth position on 21 points. They have what could only be called a dream run home with games against lowly ranked Souths, Easts and Canterbury, then a tough away clash with Illawarra just before the semis. They should qualify comfortably. The President's Cup boys are in a similar position, also just 1 point out of the five, but their run to the semis not quite so easy. The home game against Souths should produce a win, but Easts, Canterbury and Illawarra are all looming as major hurdles, with the Bulldogs in particular flying high in third spot. This one could go right down to the wire, but Waite won't be using his players like chess pieces.
The first grade team is selected on the fittest and the best players available, and the second grade likewise, and then the 21s likewise. And I think that's the way we'll go. And to start putting people back is to decry the performances of those that have been doing it all year.
Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
The wall of water flattened hundreds of hectares, tearing away 600 houses, destroying roads and railways and cutting off all communications. Rescue workers are bringing in food and medicine to the 13,000 people who've been affected by the disaster. It's the worst natural disaster in Romania since an earthquake in 1977 killed 1,000 people. The death toll this time has topped 60, but rescuers fear the list will rise as floods could worsen with predictions of more rain.
According to the CSIRO, the deposits of heavy metals are the legacy of decades of lead and zinc smelting at the Bullaroo sulphide plant. They are mostly confined to the northern reaches of the lake. Although emission levels from the smelter have been greatly reduced and stringently policed, the scientific organisation claims the damage has already been done. The northern end of Lake Macquarie ranks along with the Derwent River in Tasmania and Port Kembla as one of Australia's worst examples of heavy metal contamination of the sediment. Shellfish such as mussels, the frontline indicators of the effects of pollutants such as zinc and lead, won't even live here anymore.
In a recent attempt to sample cockles from the north of the lake, we had a hard job finding them.
The startling disclosure was made by Dr. Graham Batley of the CSIRO at an environmental seminar on the condition of the lake.
The worst contamination is nearest to Cockle Creek, so maybe you want to get rid of that first. And the question is then, what do you do with the stuff once you dig it up?
The sediment could be dredged and would then most likely be dumped at sea. If left alone, cleaner sediment deposits could in time bury the old, and an uncontaminated life cycle will replace that which now sees shellfish with heavy metal levels above World Health limits.
If they're only taking up twice the limit and you've got to eat a hell of a lot of them before you're in trouble, well, let's accept that we've got dirty sediments and they're maybe not as big a problem as we thought. You either have, clean sediments with very little water, or you have good recreational area for boating and get rid of the contaminated sediments.
The Royal New South Wales Institute for Deaf and Blind Children will establish a new college at its North Rocks headquarters in Sydney. Known as the Renwick College, it will train postgraduates to a master's level in educational research and teaching in sensory disability. The Chief Executive of the Institute, John Berryman, travelled to Newcastle today for a joint launching of the project with the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Newcastle, Professor Keith Morgan. The Institute had searched Australia and overseas before finding a suitable partner for the venture.
The University of Newcastle has some very important characteristics, one of which is it has an outstanding centre of special education, and it has an established record of working with community organisations, of reaching out to the community in a number of joint ventures.
Teachers from the newly established Tingara Centre at Floraville will be among those to attend the college. Their work presently embraces the integration of sensory disabled youngsters into regular preschool classes. It's hoped their future training will enhance the achievements already gained.
Our ultimate objective, of course, is to make sure that what happens in the classroom between teacher and sensorily impaired student is of the highest quality. So we're ensuring that now and into the future, those teachers have the best possible training and the best research backing for the work that they do.
With less than 24 hours to go before the Prime Minister's arrival, the employees at Century Oils were busy today putting on the finishing touches. While building up the nuts and bolts of its plant for the past 4 years, Century Oils has also developed its own technology for manufacturing specialist lubricant products. Those products, including a fire-resistant hydraulic fluid, are particularly sought after by the Hunters coal mining industry for its underground equipment. With the bulk of its oils coming to this region, Century decided to base itself in Wickham.
We decided on Newcastle because it was our largest customer base and we wanted to be very central to our customers.
Ms Norman says Century Oils is also developing export markets.
We do have some export business in the Philippines, New Zealand and Indonesia, again in the coal mining industry, and developments there are looking very, very good.
At the moment, Century is producing about 1 million litres of product a month, but it has the capacity for an output of more than 400,000 litres a day.
At a special meeting of the committee last night, McLean withdrew his resignation, stating that it was in the best interest of the club that he do so. The furore erupted 10 days ago when McLean resigned after saying that he couldn't work with the club's treasurer, Tony Halpin. But after several meetings, which included both McLean and Halpin, an understanding has been struck and the Newcastle Harness Racing Club is back to normal, at least for the time being.
On the PM schedule, a tour of the earthquake-affected areas of the city first stopped the New Workers Club. It was classic Hawke in election mode, meeting with school children and saying g'day to workers. "20 months ago, it was a grim-faced visitor who toured the site where 9 people were killed. Today, Mr Hawke looked on as massive 40-metre beams were lifted into place to form the roof of the new auditorium. The club should be finished by June next year. The Prime Minister then moved on to a street walk through Hamilton, another area badly damaged by the quake.
It's marvellous the way the spirit of the people has fought back, and it's going to be better than it was before.
The Prime Minister's return to the Labor heartland received a presidential-style reception, with one exception, a silent protest over the woodchip industry. However, most people were clamouring to meet him, one young girl handing over a special present. With the Meet the People walk behind him, the PM got back to business, lunching with union officials. The agenda for that meeting was not made public, Mr Hawke's advisers saying it was a chance for officials to speak candidly with the Prime Minister. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Prime Minister had an early start today. He went into the 2HD studios for half an hour behind the microphone with Terry Willisey. Mr Hawke told listeners he was delighted to be back in the heartland.
I've been wanting to get back to Newcastle for some time, and
But he was defensive when asked why the heartland was hurting and for how much longer.
when I came to office in '83, the steel industry was going to disappear. I mean, the plans for its elimination were underway. And I said, if I can be rude, bugger that. We are going to keep a steel industry. Now, together, we have done it.
With part of that pain due to the loss of the submarine and frigates contracts, Mr Hawke reiterated his earlier undertaking that $700 million of project work would come to the Hunter.
The commitments that were made in regard to the share for Newcastle of the defence contracts, both in regard to frigates and submarines, that will be at least adhered to.
As for future defence contracts, the PM indicated the government would be sympathetic if the revitalised Carrington slipways tendered for work.
With this new management in here, they will be competitive, and all things being equal, they'll get contracts.
Mr Hawke then joined about 300 people from a diversity of ethnic backgrounds to officially open the Tanoni Gardens multicultural village at Waratah. The village is home to 40 residents, with many from non-English speaking backgrounds. But 86-year-old Eileen Robinson has been the first to have a PM drop in for a chat.
Hey, listen, you got your own little bit of garden too. That's nice, isn't it? That's nice.
Really exciting. Really something I'll be able to talk about for the rest of life.
Later, Mr Hawke did more plaque unveiling at the $3 million Century Oils plant at Wickham. The Prime Minister's final engagement was a meeting with local politicians in the Federal Task Force for the Hunter. The media wasn't allowed into the meeting, but it's believed that projects that could be developed in the Hunter as a kind of compensation for missing out on the Sea Safety Centre were high on the agenda. Peter Ryan has more on the Prime Minister's visit.
Lagusa has been in brilliant form of late, winning a host of tournaments and shot to an early 4-1 lead before East Maitland's Australian representative Dennis Dalton began his charge. Dalton grabbed a 4, a 2 and a 3 to storm to a 23-14 lead after 22 ends and looked to have the tournament in his keeping. But then Lagusa staged a remarkable comeback with delicate draw shots and strong drives to win the next 8 ends and lead 27-25. Dalton made 3 shots on the 36th end to again take the lead before Lagusa levelled at 29 all. Dalton grabbed 1 to lead 30-29, and on the 39th end of the marathon match, Lagusa bowled brilliantly to make 2 shots and be crowned the new champion 31-30, collecting $3,200 for his troubles. .30 cars will contest round 5 over 14.5 torturous kilometres of the Wattigans, competing in 3 classes based on engine capacity. The Mid-Coast Petroleum Rally Sprint has attracted the cream of the state's drivers, including Ron Kremen, who gave his brand new $60,000 Galant VR4 Turbo its first workout in rally conditions today. Ron is about to head off to Perth for a round of the World Rally Championships, where he will campaign the Galant, and this weekend is important preparation for the West.
We're using this weekend exactly for the purpose of doing all the tyre testing and brake testing here. We need to do that in competition to gauge ourselves against the other cars that we'll be competing against in Perth. So this weekend we're looking forward to a sort of trouble-free run if we can, and a good test time as well.
Pushing Ron for outright honours tomorrow will be the current leader of the state rally title, Justin Barham of YE, who hopes to go a little straighter during the actual competition. He's delighted with the quality of the field.
As well as it has been in the past couple of years, Ron's preparing his car for the World Championship Rally. I'm just having a bit of a test run myself for the next state championship round. There's a few other guys coming out of Sydney doing the same thing, I think.
And for those who like their action fast, furious and a bit dusty, the Wattigan track is in perfect nick.
There's some fantastic viewing areas. The crowds like to come out and spend a day in the forest and watch a bit of dust and a bit of excitement. Yeah, it's great.